everyone. I'm Rihanna Bag, Editor-in-Chief at Machine Design. Globally, engineering and manufacturing companies are upgrading their design platforms. CAD, product lifecycle management, and other cloud-based design platforms are increasingly driven by advancements in AI, IoT integration, and the increasing demand for collaborative and compliant design solutions. Also, the shift towards cloud-based platforms is expected to further transform how engineering teams collaborate and innovate across many industries. I'd like to welcome Dave Katzman, General Manager of Onshape and Arena at PTC, and Darren Henry, Senior Vice President of General Operations, Onshape by PTC. These gentlemen, I'm wrangling their expertise because they can certainly walk us through some of the updates that they're bringing to cloud-based design platforms, especially as they now include artificial intelligence assistance and also can provide ITAR compliance. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You know, I would really like to start with having each of you introduce yourselves, give me a little bit about your background. This is your elevator pitch. And then introduce me to the products that you have been launching this year.
Sure, happy to. I'll go first and Darren can jump in. Hi, everyone. Dave Katzman. I lead our Onshape and Arena businesses here at PTC. I've been with PTC for a little over 5 years, actually joined by way of acquisition when Onshape was acquired by PTC. Spent 5 years with Onshape prior to that. My background actually is computer engineering. That's what my degree is in anyways, although I've actually never used it much. I've always lived in the mechanical world. And then Darren.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Darren Henry. I'm the Senior Vice President of General Operations. I oversee a lot of different groups within Onshape business unit, but I have a rich history in CAD. I worked at SolidWorks for years. Before that, I worked with resellers, probably 30 years experience in 3D CAD. So we're really excited about actually 2 offerings. One is Onshape AI Advisor. We think this is really the foundation. You know, we'll get into this in the conversation, but AI is relatively new in the manufacturing and CAD space. And our first offering is called Onshape AI Advisor. And it's an AI-powered assistant that actually sits with you 24/7. And it's actually trained on all the amazing resources that we have related to our products. So this is an expert that's been trained on all online documentation, all learning content, all webinars, all videos. And it's there to really help you if you're transitioning to a cloud-native system, if you're transitioning to Onshape, but also tackling those most difficult problems that you run into. So it really helps our users optimize their efficiencies.
Say, Rihanna, the other thing we're really excited to talk about today is that Onshape government release that you mentioned earlier. And what this is our first deployment of Onshape in a dedicated region at AWS that's for ITAR and EAR workflows. And so not only are we now deployed there from a technology standpoint, but we have all the people and processes in place internally to make sure we comply with those regulations. This is really exciting for us as we've had a lot of demand over the past several years in that space, but we haven't been able to fulfill it until just now. So we're pretty excited about the opportunity ahead.
It feels like depending on the industry that you're in, you cannot have one without the other. So it's nice to be able to talk to both of you on what each one brings. So let's consider the rollout of Onshape AI Advisor first. How does Onshape AI assist in speeding up the design process? So really, what I'm looking for is trying to understand, does it identify design flaws or suggest improvements in real time, and more importantly for this conversation, how exactly does AI factor into the decision-making process?
Yeah, these are great questions. So I do want to point out it's early days. So this is our foundational offering that we have, Onshape AI Advisor. But we envision it right now. I think it's important for everyone to know that Onshape's a relatively new next generation player in the market space. So in many cases, our customer base are leaving sort of a traditional file-based on-prem solution and going into these new cloud-native workflows. The cloud-native workflows are quite different. So one of the biggest benefits of Onshape AI Advisor right now is helping people make that transition. It helps you not only learn the software, which may be new, where you're looking for, the common commands like fillet and shell. It will help you find those very quickly. But more importantly, we're utilizing things like Git-like data management that is traditionally used in the software world, relatively new for hardware engineers. So Onshape AI Advisor actually acts as sort of a Sherpa, taking you through these complex workflows so you can really transform the way your company works. That's the number one use case. Again, it is an expert. So as engineers are doing different things, like maybe traditionally you're building a lot of geometry, but maybe you need to route a cable through something, or you need to do something very specific. This is an expert that can actually walk you through difficult design challenges. And then the last thing is, there's administrative aspects where you're adding. One of the benefits is you're deploying software instantly to a team. You can scale to a team. You can downsize. You can democratize. How data is shared throughout your whole enterprise and organization. So this is a tool that can help people, really get the most out of the software. But you raise an interesting point, which is, can it actually do things like design checking, and can it actually do tasks for you? And ultimately what people want is, will it help me build geometry and actually do the CADing faster? Well, at this point, it doesn't. But what we see is this is a foundational layer which will not only improve with every usage, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It improves with all new information that we add, and we do updates every 3 weeks, but it actually will start becoming aware of what you're doing in the product. And we want it to become agentic, which is actually complete tasks for you. What's nice about this is we built this on AWS Bedrock. AWS was actually heavily involved in how we built this. So it's a very solid foundation, and we have very aggressive plans on how to improve it in the future to do those tasks that you mentioned.
I do think, maybe just real quick, one thing Darren mentioned that's really important is it not only helps people as they get started with Onshape, but as Darren mentioned, Onshape gets updated every 3 weeks with new features, new functionality. And what this is really excited for us is this is the first, an opportunity where the users are always engaging with this experience now. It used to be, you'd learn a tool, and once you learned it, which most of the time you learned it from the person next to you, if you ask anyone how they learned, say, SolidWorks or any other tool, it's usually they learned it from the engineer next to them. Now that it's more of, I get to learn it through this AI advisor. It's like a partner as I'm learning the tool. And more importantly, as the tool evolves, your partner's ahead of you, which usually that's not the case, right? You're all learning new things along the way. This is kind of a whole different way of thinking about learning and using the tool, where we have a partner in crime in a sense. So it's something I think we're really excited about, and something that, again, having been doing this for some time, we've always found it, challenging to keep people that are users up to date with the software. Now our tool will help them stay up to date, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, though. When you mentioned the update every 3 weeks, when I read that in your press notes, that was very confusing for me. I didn't quite understand what that meant and how quickly that would happen. You're obviously taking in the data and learning from users, I suppose, and what is important to them and what their preferences are. So can you walk me through perhaps some of those capabilities and, for example, and how the AI co-pilot, as it were, would help in version control, or for another example would be for automating repetitive tasks. I'll let you drive what the actual capabilities are and how you're working together.
Well, so one of the things that's exciting, if you're not familiar with Onshape, or if your listeners aren't familiar with Onshape, this is very unique. It's fully cloud. We call it cloud native, which means all the computation is handled in the cloud. All the data storage is handled in the cloud. And then what's also very unique about us is we're not a file-based system. So in the old days on traditional CAD, you would make files. Maybe you have part files, assembly files, drawing files, and they're all interrelated. And they're extremely difficult to manage, and version control and release. When you get into the, you begin to leave the PDM world and go into the PLM space. And there's a headache involved in doing that manually. So people put a PDM system in place, and then it adds other serial workflows, because now you have to check in and check out, and there's locking. With our system, it's quite different. We're a database-driven system, not a file-based system. So as you work, Onshape's recording everything. And so the first thing I just want to point out is that there is a learning curve to utilize these new, what we call software development workflows, these agile workflows, and apply them to hardware. So the first thing Onshape AI Advisor does is explain that for you in common terms. You interface with it and you say, I don't understand. What do I do with a branch? What do I do with merge? And it will actually walk you through those. And it will not only walk you through and give you a nice response, but it actually gives you citations so you can watch videos and online help. So that's probably the most important thing it does. But the second thing it does, which is if you make mistakes somewhere, it's having that expert next to me. I version controlled something and I didn't want to. What do? It will teach you how to restore back from that version. I have a assembly and I haven't released the parts yet, but I'd like to release the assembly. Can I do it all at once? It will help you understand our workflows to do that. In the future, it may even go further than that, than advising you. But right now, it is taking that advisor role. And it is key to understand that it is a dynamic workflow that's different for Onshape. So this is as I said, I think Sherpa is a good word, but a guide to navigate these new workflows, because these workflows and different schools have done studies on this. This is what's really transformational for hardware companies to really go to market much faster with a higher quality product.
I wonder now if you can comment even further, drill a little bit deeper in understanding for someone who uses CAD modeling, for example, in their day-to-day. Talk about integrating with simulation and analysis, or we've already just talked a little bit about the workflow, but the manufacturing workflow. How does it all come together, and how does the Sherpa now interact, or what is the interface? What learning needs to happen, and how do you bring these different tools that you typically would have done manually, through simulation modeling? How does your AI assistant now factor its knowledge into that? And maybe the better way for me to understand is if you use an example, a use case.
Yeah, so Onshape does have simulation capabilities built in. It has photo rendering capabilities. It has interfaces into PCB design tools. It also has CAM as well, so we can do toolpaths and machining. So all these different disciplines are always, they sort of, your modeling acts as the hub, and then you go into these different directions to get certain deliverables. So right now, what Onshape AI Advisor will do is help you understand the setting up of those problems, how to set those up. It'll talk about, like, for example, there's been resources that we've put out there which talk about best practices for simulation. Now, what we're doing is removing the burden of the user actually reading all those resources and sort of aggregating that data. We put that expert in place. So as you're doing it, you ask it a specific question. I'd like to simplify my model for simulation. And Onshape Advisor, you would type in that question. Onshape Advisor would tell you the best tool sets to do that. I'm having a performance issue. It's running really long. Onshape Advisor would look at our knowledge base on how we handle performance issues and give you advice on how to optimize performance for your solves. I'm finding that a part is not, it has a yield stress that's too low. It will hit our knowledge base and talk where we've talked about that, maybe in a webinar, maybe in a video, and extract out that information and give you examples of how, to add mass to the part to make it stronger, or to add different features to eliminate stress concentrations. So what's really exciting about it is that whatever content in the past that we've put out there, and we have quite a huge, very high fidelity, high dimensional database of learning resources, it sort of aggregates that and acts as your guide.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave, I want to bring you in here and ask you, I think that data really is the currency of the day. So how does leveraging a software as a service solution with secure cloud infrastructure enable manufacturers to safely adopt AI technologies and then still protect their IP, their intellectual property? Help me understand how you're keeping it all safe.
No, sure. Happy to. I mean, I think it's really important for people to hear there's nothing more important to us than taking care of our customers and their data. And we take that incredibly serious from day one of when we started building the system until today. There's nothing that's ever changed there. What's really important about that is, to your point, what makes us really unique is it is cloud native, which means all of the infrastructure, and when you talk about AI, already exists in the cloud, which is required to do really intense AI workloads. And so from an infrastructure perspective, we're years and leap years ahead of all of the competitors. And then when you talk about security, as I mentioned, we started from the ground up with security being built in. And so everything about our system has the concept of who has access to what. So, and that's no different for any user as well as our own people and our own AI, for instance. And so, having that infrastructure and context already well ingrained in the team allows us to be more thoughtful and creative with how we can optimize and build the solution. So I think from a starting point, we've had an unfair competitive advantage already. And now what we're really doing is how to be thoughtful with what the right next things are and to do with that information. And Darren mentioned AI advisors, our first step, which it is. And then the other thing I'll just mention is Onshape has an enormous public free user community, which is actually all public data. It's not proprietary, it's not confidential. Again, which is very unique. And it's the only system in the world that has one so large. And so when you combine that with the infrastructure we mentioned with the data set, the opportunities are kind of limitless for what we can eventually do. But what we're trying to be is really intentional and thoughtful with those things, so we're adding value to our customers and to what what people need, not just something that's really cool to talk about. And so AI Advisor is a great step, and it's something we're really proud of. And I think what you'll see over the coming months and years is even more great innovation from our team here.
So this was Onshape Government was purposefully designed to meet the aerospace and defense related compliance provisions, correct? So what do design engineers need to know about Onshape Government?
Sure. I think there's two parts. One is what do design engineers need to know about Onshape, which is that the tool is capable, can be used for their design process, and what they're designing. And the second part is about the government. It's that they can use it for workloads that typically require ITAR controls, which is for the U.S. government anyways. And so up until now, they could have known the first part, whether they could do their job, but they couldn't actually do. You couldn't use it if certain controls weren't in place. Now we've enabled that workflow for those organizations that require that compliance. And so what I'd say is they need to understand is that from a technology standpoint, it's no different from a CAD feature set as any other edition of Onshape. The only thing different is how we and where we place the data so it stays within the United States and stays within all the controls there.